They left a single dad waiting outside his own office for 40 minutes. Then he fired everyone inside. Marcus Whitfield stood outside the glass doors of the office he had built with his own 2 hands, watching his reflection stare back at him. And for 40 long minutes, not a single person inside looked up to let him in. 40 minutes. That is how long a man who owned the very floor they stood on was left standing in a hallway like a stranger, while the people he trusted, the people he had lifted up, laughed and chatted just beyond a pane of glass, blind to the storm that was quietly building behind his calm eyes. To understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to understand who Marcus Whitfield really was. He was not born into wealth. He was raised by a single mother in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, where the heater rattled more than it warmed, and dinner was sometimes just rice and whatever sauce she could stretch across the week. He watched her work double shifts, come home with swollen feet, and still find the strength to kiss him goodnight, and tell him that one day things would be different. He carried those words like armor through every rejection, every closed door, every night he slept in his car, during the early years of building his company, from nothing but an idea and a stubborn refusal to quit. By the time he was 42, Marcus had built a logistics and technology firm that quietly moved millions of dollars a month, employing hundreds of people who had no idea their unassuming, soft-spoken CEO once could not afford bus fare. He kept his life deliberately simple. He drove an ordinary car. He wore understated suits. He rarely announced his title unless it was necessary, because more than anything, Marcus wanted to know that the people around him respected him for who he was, not for what he was worth. And there was one more truth that shaped every decision he made. Marcus was a single father, raising his 8-year-old daughter, Maya, alone after losing his wife 3 years earlier, to an illness that took her far too soon. Maya was his entire world. Every meeting he scheduled worked around her school pickup. Every late night at the office was followed by a race home to help with homework and read one more chapter of whatever book had captured her imagination that week. His employees knew he was a father. What they did not fully grasp was how deeply that identity shaped the values of the company itself. Values built on patience, dignity, and the belief that everyone deserved to be treated like they mattered. If this story is already touching something in you, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in people who rise no matter how hard life pushes them down, take a moment right now to like this video. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. Share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And subscribe to Kindness Corner, because stories like this one are only just getting started. On the morning everything changed, Marcus had returned from a quiet 3-day trip. One he had taken privately to visit Maya's school counselor, after she mentioned feeling overwhelmed. He had told his leadership team he would be reachable, but preferred not to be disturbed, unless it was urgent. What he did not expect was that during those 3 days, a senior manager named Douglas had quietly convinced several department heads that Marcus was becoming, in his words, too soft, too invested in his home life, and not aggressive enough to keep growing the company. Douglas saw an opportunity. He began treating Marcus's absence not as trust, but as a vacancy. So when Marcus arrived that morning, badge in hand, ready to start his day like any other, he found his key card mysteriously deactivated at the main office entrance. He assumed it was a technical glitch and calmly asked the receptionist, a young woman new to the company, to buzz him in. She hesitated, glanced toward the glass conference room, where Douglas was holding an unscheduled meeting with the other senior staff, and told Marcus she had been instructed that no one was to be let in until the meeting concluded. Marcus, ever composed, nodded and said he would wait. Minutes turned into more minutes. He watched through the glass as Douglas gestured animatedly, clearly presenting some kind of plan, while the rest of the leadership team nodded along, comfortable, confident, utterly unaware that the man they were quietly discussing, the man they assumed was distracted and disengaged, was standing right outside the door they refused to open. 40 minutes passed. Employees walked by Marcus in the hallway, offering awkward nods, sensing something was wrong, but too uncertain to intervene. Not one person from that room came out to check on him, to apologize, or even to acknowledge his presence. When the meeting finally ended and the doors opened, Douglas turned and saw Marcus standing there, arms crossed, expression unreadable, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone in the hallway. He simply asked to speak with every person who had been inside that room, one at a time, starting immediately. What followed was not born of anger, but of clarity. In each individual conversation, Marcus asked calm, direct questions, not about loyalty to him personally, but about what kind of culture they believed they were building, and whether locking out a colleague, regardless of his title, reflected the values this company claimed to stand for. One by one, the truth unraveled. Some admitted they had simply gone along with Douglas, out of fear of being left behind if his plan succeeded. Others confessed they assumed Marcus was too consumed by his personal life to notice or care. Only one person, a young operations coordinator named Renee, admitted she had objected quietly in the meeting and was overruled. And Marcus remembered that. By the end of the day, Marcus made the hardest decision of his career, dismissing every senior leader who had participated in shutting him out, not out of vengeance, but because trust, once broken at that level, cannot simply be rebuilt with an apology. What no one in that office ever knew was that Marcus had spent those 40 minutes not stewing in anger, but thinking of his daughter, of the promise he made to always build something honest for her to inherit, something that reflected who her mother had raised him to become. He believed deeply that success without integrity was simply another kind of failure, dressed in a nicer suit. In the weeks that followed, Marcus rebuilt his leadership team from within, promoting Renee and others who had shown quiet courage, and instituting a simple new rule posted in the break room. No door in this company closes on anyone, no matter their title, without a reason spoken to their face. Maya, when she grew older, would hear this story not as a tale of a father's anger, but of a father's boundaries, and she would understand that the man who waited patiently outside a locked door was the same man who never once locked her out of his heart. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that quiet strength can outlast quiet betrayal, please take a moment to comment below and share what part touched you most, because your words matter more than you know. And before we close this chapter, I want to ask you gently, from one storyteller to a caring viewer, to like this video and share it with someone who needs to remember that dignity and patience are never signs of weakness. Thank you for watching this story all the way through, for choosing kindness in a world that often forgets to, and for being part of this Kindness Corner family. Until the next story, stay gentle, stay strong, and never let anyone convince you that your quiet strength is invisible.